Hey y'all, and welcome to Politibrawl. My name is Brian, and Trump's national security advisor, Michael Waltz, absolutely obliterates the legacy media in this brilliant takedown. Let's dive in.
Is clear about why Kelly has said this now, or really reiterated it, confirmed it, is that he has a lot of concerns about Trump talking about this enemy within, this idea of using the American military to target his own political opponents, which is a very un-American idea, and that is something that's the timing. To your timing question, that's the answer there.
Well, perhaps. I don't know John Kelly. I don't think I've ever even met him. He clearly has a deep disdain for Donald Trump and was fired by him. You also have the owner of the Atlantic magazine is a huge donor for Kamala Harris and a close personal friend. So I find that incredibly interesting. And on this kind of enemies within, what President Trump actually said was, if we have national unrest, if we have riots, if we have people, and law and order is broken down, then it is completely appropriate to use the military. The National Guard has been used throughout our history.
He has named the Pelosi's congressman. He has named your colleague Adam Schiff.
You had Adam Schiff on this network and many others lying to the American people, opening a hearing lying to the American people, saying that he had seen, but you raised him.
And saying
he had saying he had seen evidence of Russian collusion that proved to be false, and our country was in total chaos for 2 years on a hoax, which also affected our relationship with Russia. So that is an enemy within. And I don't think that he said that he's going to use the military to target him. He said in one part of the conversation, we have to quell riots and keep law and order, and if the military needs to support law enforcement, fine. And on the other hand, he said we have people that are misleading the American public, that's causing chaos.
I just want to be clear.
I hope you can roll the
He's talked about He's talked about the National Guard, right, and then he talked about the military.
But let's go back to this notion of fascism and centralized control, because we have an allegation of rhetoric. We have, he said versus he said. And then what I'm seeing are actual actions by the progressive left. I mean, fascism really is about no checks and balances, no controls. They want to stack the Supreme Court. I've seen that legislation. They want to eliminate the filibuster, our last kind of harbinger of bipartisanship. They want to eliminate the Electoral College, which would have just a couple of cities determining our next president. Those are critical checks and balances that will check power for anyone. And the left is actually moving to eliminate them because they don't like them. So what I think voters are going to have to decide in these next couple of weeks is, we have allegations of rhetoric from a conversation 4 years ago, or actions that they are seeing right now from the left, or the lack of action in terms of making their lives better in the economy, in crime, in the border, and in global chaos.
Brilliant. An absolutely brilliant takedown. And there have been people who've been noticing this trend for a while. And despite the fact that Jonah Goldberg used to write, he wrote this book called Liberal Fascism, where he tied the entire American progressive movement to the actual fascists that took over in Italy and in Germany. And arguably, you could actually make the case that Stalin was a fascist. We know that Mao definitely wasn't. He was dyed-in-the-wool communist. Stalin was more of a head case, but that's not the important thing here. The important thing is the American media has been carrying water for the Democrats pretty much for forever. Ever since Walter Cronkite, in 1968, got on his television screen, removed his glasses, and just immediately addressed the American people to the horrors of the Tet Offensive. What he failed to disclose was the Tet Offensive was an abject failure from a military standpoint for the Viet Cong and the North Vietnamese. It was a huge win for the American soldier. But because Walter Cronkite came up and basically lied to the American people, there were more and more calls to either end the war or escalate the war. And because of this bad faith, because of this misallocation of the facts, the American people now started to look at the media and continue to take it as gospel when it in fact was lying to them. And that has been a trend that continued. We used to have a golden era of of journalism in America. And basically, in the middle of World War II, when the press started getting very ridiculous and started taking pot shots at major leaders, and I'm not talking about political leaders, I'm talking about American generals, that's when the generals kind of looked left and looked right and went, we got to deal with this problem. We've got a war to win. We've got to deal with actual Nazis, and we've got to deal with the insanity that was the Imperial Japan at the time. And because of this, the media realized, you know what, maybe we did take it a little bit too far. We're going to back off. We're not going to make fun of FDR for having a major disability. He had polio, and so the press never once showed a picture of him in his wheelchair. And so we had a golden era of the press from about 1942-ish to 1968. That era is long gone. Ever since, ironically, there was a movie called Network in the early 70s that was calling out news organizations for being this ridiculous sort of headline rage bait. That's all that they were doing. That was the joke of the movie, but it was happening in real time, and it's happening again. Places like CNN are out there with these ridiculous headlines trying to make sure that you are glued in. And then because of that misinformation from the headline, you start reading the article and you go, oh, that's not what you said at all. That's not what's in your headline. Same thing goes for the Washington Post. Same thing goes for MSNBC, the Atlantic, New York Times, of course. All these different publications have one goal: sell copies of their product. They don't care about information, and if they did, they'd be the Wall Street Journal. But if they cared about their actual headlines, if they cared about the news, they would not be reporting in the way that they do. What they care about is their audience. Their audience is a bunch of rich white liberals who have been so cocooned from society that they have no idea what's going on. They're insulated from the crime wave that happened after 2020, particularly during the summer of love, when George Floyd took a whole bunch of fentanyl because he was on his third strike and he was going to be thrown in jail for a while. So he thought that by ingesting the fentanyl, he'd get off the hook. It did not end well for anyone. By the way, the state of Minnesota should be sued, and it should be renamed the state of Chauvin. That police officer did nothing wrong. I will stand by that fact till the day I die. The media has one goal. That is to sell copies of its product, and they will do anything to do so. And if that means that lying to rich white liberals in order to get them to continue to buy the product, they're going to do so. Except that they have some integrity left. There is a small penny worth of integrity left in these organizations. That's why conservatives have been talking longer. That's why they've been explaining themselves on these platforms. That's why the left is starting to realize they have taken things a little too far, and now it's time to pay the piper. And oh boy, is that cost going to be high. Meanwhile, you have people like this gentleman here. Let's see, once again, his name is Michael Waltz. He's speaking truth to power. He's calling out the left for what it has done to the news media, and he's been calling out all the issues that have been just mounting time and time again until eventually you got to take that pile of excrement and turn it into fertilizer. It's time to have a comeuppance in these lefty circles, in the legacy media, and again, it's time to pay the piper. Folks, my name is Brian. Hope you enjoyed that segment here on Politibrawl. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Catch you on the next one, and until then, y'all have a good one.